I'll never forget the sound her laughter made that morning. It had a bright, carefree ring to it, the kind you hear in a cheesy rom-com right before everything falls apart. Sarah was sitting at the kitchen counter, swirling almond milk into her coffee with a delicate grace that always seemed a little too performative. She was scrolling through her phone, smiling in that soft, secretive way that used to be just for me. It was a lazy Saturday morning. The sky outside was awash in early sunlight, filtering through our windows and casting golden beams across the marble countertop. I was making us breakfast, her favorite, eggs soft scrambled with goat cheese and fresh dill. It should have been a perfect, ordinary morning between husband and wife. But then her phone buzzed. She picked it up without hesitation, thumbs moving quickly across the screen. Then she giggled, low and sweet, the kind of laugh reserved for flirtation, not for a husband standing 6 feet away making her breakfast. That was the moment the seed of suspicion finally sprouted in my chest, twisting itself around my lungs. Sarah excused herself to the bathroom, taking her phone with her. That was unusual. She normally left it on the counter. Maybe it was nothing. Maybe I was just being paranoid. Maybe I was projecting. But the silence in the bathroom stretched far too long for a simple pee break. When she finally returned, I forced a smile and slid the eggs onto her plate. She kissed me on the cheek, said something sweet, something generic. But my ears were full of static. She excused herself again 10 minutes later, this time to grab something from the car. That's when I made the decision. I never thought of myself as a snoop, but I knew her passcode. Knew it because we trusted each other, or at least, I thought we did. My fingers trembled as I picked up her phone and unlocked it. The messages were right there. She hadn't even bothered to delete them, just archived the thread, as if hiding the truth in a shadow box was enough to make it disappear. Tom. I can't stop thinking about the way you moaned yesterday. You've ruined me. Sarah. Then ruin me again. Tomorrow. Same time. I felt the bottom drop out of the world. A black pit opened in my chest and swallowed everything whole. I couldn't breathe. My wife, my Sarah, was having an affair. And not just any affair. Tom. The smug, over-tanned bastard from her gym. Her trainer. The one she said was just intense, the one I jokingly referred to as Captain CrossFit when she started wearing tighter leggings and talking about macros. The man who sent her home flushed and breathless 3 times a week, claiming it was just high-intensity interval training. The bile rose in my throat. There were photos, too. A selfie of him shirtless, sweat clinging to his abs. A blurry mirror shot of Sarah, topless in the gym locker room, cropped just below her chin but unmistakably her. Those birthmarks on her collarbone I'd kissed 1,000 times. There was one where they were in bed, legs tangled, her face half hidden behind his neck, smiling. That smile. Not a guilty smile. Not a shy one. A smile of satisfaction. The kind she hadn't given me in months. I felt the world shift. My hands were numb. My pulse thundered like a war drum in my ears. I had 2 options. Rage or silence. I chose the latter. When she came back inside, talking about how she'd left her water bottle in the car, I played along. I smiled. I kissed her temple. I told her the eggs were good today. Didn't they taste a little better? And I watched. Every movement, every expression, every flick of her eyes as she answered another message, probably from him. And in my mind, I began to build. Not revenge. Not yet. Just a plan. An architecture of consequence. That night, I held her in bed while she slept like a child beside me. She curled against me the way she always had. She murmured in her sleep, like nothing had changed. But everything had. I stared at the ceiling for hours, remembering the messages, the images, the soft urgency of her replies to Tom. And I wondered, did she still love me at all? Or had I become just furniture? Familiar. Comfortable. A couch she no longer noticed, but wouldn't throw away just yet. I could feel the rage bubbling under my skin, coiling tighter with every breath I took beside her. But I didn't explode. Not yet. I needed time. Time to understand. To calculate. To prepare. Because if Sarah wanted passion, she was going to get it. Only this time, it wouldn't be in the gym. It would be in the reckoning. It's strange how, once you know the truth, everything takes on new meaning. The scent of her perfume lingering in the hallway. Tom had inhaled that same scent, no doubt buried his face in the hollow of her neck the way I used to. The lace underwear I once bought her for our anniversary, now reserved for his greedy hands. I found a pair tucked behind the dryer, red and delicate, the kind that used to be meant for me. I didn't confront her. Not yet. Instead, I studied her. I noticed how she was always freshly showered when she got home from training, how her phone barely left her hand, how her body would tense, ever so slightly, when I entered the room too quietly. But Sarah didn't know I knew, and that gave me power. The next Thursday, I took a personal day from work. Sarah thought I was on site at a downtown pitch meeting. Instead, I parked my car a few blocks from the gym and waited. Watched. The same tinted glass doors she passed through 3 days a week. It wasn't long before he appeared, Tom, the Adonis. 6 foot something, dark hair, sculpted arms like chiseled stone, and a confidence that radiated off him like a musk. He wasn't with her, not today. He exited alone, earbuds in, tank top soaked with sweat. His body language exuded the kind of arrogance that only comes from fucking someone else's wife. I trailed him. Not too close. Just enough to keep him in sight. He walked like he owned the pavement. Every turn he made, I followed, blending into the city hum. Eventually, he slipped into his small corner cafe on 6th and Grove. I ducked behind a florist stand across the street. And then, fate. Out she came. Not Sarah. Her. Poised, elegant. Hair tucked back in a tight low bun, pearl studs in her ears. She wore a tailored trench coat, pale gray with sharp lines, cinched perfectly at the waist. She had the unmistakable posture of someone raised on discipline, chin high, movements precise. The kind of woman who didn't just enter a room. She arrived. I watched as she stepped inside the same cafe Tom had just entered. She didn't greet him immediately, no kiss, no obvious affection. But she looked around, as if expecting someone else. Maybe confirming her suspicion. And then she saw me. We locked eyes through the glass, just for a second too long. I looked away first, pretending to study the flower bouquets beside me. But I knew it then. That wasn't a random woman. That was his wife. I waited. My heart thudded, not with fear, but with the kind of adrenaline that comes when you realize you're standing on the edge of something dangerous, something potentially life-altering. 15 minutes passed. 20. Then she walked out again, alone this time. I stepped from behind the florist. "Excuse me," I said as she passed, feigning hesitation. "Sorry to bother you. Do you happen to know if Tom's still inside?" She froze. Her eyes narrowed ever so slightly. "Do I know you?" I smiled gently. "No, but we have mutual acquaintances." Her gaze sharpened like a blade. "Are you at the gym?" "Not exactly." She studied me for a beat. I could see her calculating, evaluating. "I'm Victoria," she said finally, her voice crisp, deliberate. "And you are?" "Daniel." Her handshake was firm, elegant fingers warm but distant. She was guarded, but not cold. The kind of woman who knows something's wrong but doesn't let it show unless she chooses to. I looked down the street, then back to her. "Would you believe me if I said I wasn't trying to cause trouble, but I think we're both involved in something we didn't sign up for?" She didn't flinch. "Let me guess," she said dryly. "Your wife trains with Tom." There it was. The quiet acknowledgement. The first stone laid between us. I nodded. "Sarah." She folded her arms. "I figured. I wasn't sure until last week. Tom's not discreet. He never has been." A pause settled between us. Heavy. Electric. "You're not going to tell him I spoke to you, are you?" I asked. "I haven't decided yet." She offered a faint smile, one that didn't reach her eyes. "Are you here to gather evidence or just to suffer quietly?" I laughed bitterly. "Honestly, I haven't decided either." For a long moment, we just stood there, two strangers bonded by betrayal. She adjusted her coat and tilted her head. "If you ever want to talk," she reached into her bag, pulled out a card, and handed it to me. "I'd rather have facts than assumptions." I took it. "Thanks. I'll think about it." She walked away with the grace of someone who didn't yet know how her world was collapsing, but who would face it on her own terms when it did. As she disappeared around the corner, I turned the card over in my hand. Victoria Marin, interior consultant. And beneath that, a handwritten cell number. I tucked it into my pocket like a loaded bullet. That night, when Sarah came home all smiles and gym clothes, she kissed me hello. I kissed her back. She told me about her killer hit class, with a sweat-soaked water bottle still in hand. I smiled, but my mind was already racing with what came next. This wasn't just about catching them anymore. It was about what I was going to do with it. The message I sent her was short, deliberate. He's not just your problem anymore. Let's talk. I didn't sign it. I didn't need to. Less than an hour later, her reply buzzed in. Tomorrow. 4 p.m. Café Levier, back patio. Come alone. I spent that entire next day with my stomach coiled like a spring. Every email at work blurred into white noise, every conversation with a client a hollow echo. Even Sarah's morning kiss had felt foreign, like it belonged to someone else's memory of her, not the version of her I now saw with new eyes. By 3:45, I was already sitting at Café Levier, one of those places that pretends to be European with its overpriced espresso and hand-painted tile tables. I chose a spot in the far corner of the patio, shielded by a row of potted plants and warmed by soft afternoon light. I wore something neutral, gray button-down, jeans, no ring. She arrived exactly at 4 o'clock. Victoria moved like she'd rehearsed every step, confident but unhurried, with that innate poise that can't be faked. She wore a cream blouse and tailored black pants, hair twisted into a loose bun that somehow made her look both soft and intimidating. She spotted me instantly and slid into the seat across from me without a word. We just stared at each other for a moment. No handshake this time. No polite pretense. She broke the silence first. "So, you're really doing this?" I nodded. "I think we both deserve the truth." Her jaw tensed. "And what exactly is your truth?" I pulled out my phone and opened the screenshots folder. With trembling fingers, I turned the screen toward her. Her lips tightened, but she didn't cry, didn't gasp. She just stared at the messages, the pet names, the late-night confessions, the innuendo so brazen it made my skin crawl. After a long moment, she handed the phone back. "Looks like he hasn't changed," she said softly. "I found similar messages 3 months ago. He swore it ended then." "And you believed him?" She looked away, the first real crack in her veneer. "I wanted to. You don't just throw away 10 years without trying to fix the leaks." We sat in silence, watching strangers sip lattes and smile, unaware that at our little table the wreckage of 2 marriages was being carefully laid bare. "So, what now?" I finally asked. Victoria took a slow breath. "We could tell them. Confront them together." "I've considered it," I said. "But I wanted to understand first. Why him? Why her? What the hell were they chasing?" She gave me a sad little smile. Validation. Excitement. Or maybe just the thrill of secrecy. I hate how easy it was for them. "Me too," she murmured, then caught my eyes. "What did you do when you found out?" "Nothing," I admitted. "Not yet." I pretended, smiled, acted like breakfast still tasted good. Like her kiss didn't make my skin crawl. She nodded slowly, her lips parted just slightly. There was something vulnerable in her now, something raw beneath the grace. She glanced down at her hands. "No wedding ring. I took mine off this morning," she said without looking up. It felt like it was burning. I exhaled. "I haven't yet. I think I wanted her to feel the weight of it when she touches me." Victoria looked up again, this time directly, her gaze harder. "I want to expose him," she said. "I want them both to squirm." A silence fell again, but this time it was different. Not empty. Charged. "We could work together," I offered. "If we plan it right, we could hit them where it hurts." She narrowed her eyes. "You mean a spy? Gather evidence?" "I mean we can watch. Wait." Choose the moment that cuts deepest. She leaned back in her chair, evaluating me. "You've changed, haven't you? Since finding out." I nodded. "I think I was sleepwalking before this." "I get that," she said quietly. "I spent years being the good wife. The composed, supportive half of a power couple. I thought I'd earned his loyalty by being dependable." "You're a hell of a lot more than dependable," I said before I could stop myself. She blinked, surprised. And for the first time, I saw it, the faintest blush, crawling up her neck and touching her cheeks. She averted her eyes, then quickly composed herself. "I should go," she said. "Before this gets more complicated." I didn't want her to go. Not yet. But I said, "Okay." She stood, brushing non-existent wrinkles from her pants. "Daniel," she said softly. I looked up. "You're not the only one sleepwalking," she whispered. "I think I've been dreaming for 10 years. And now I'm finally waking up." I nodded. "Me too." She hesitated. Then, without warning, she leaned down and kissed me on the cheek. It wasn't romantic. Not yet. But it lingered. Her lips were soft. Her breath warm. And for a moment, my pulse forgot how to behave. She pulled away, her fingers grazing my shoulder. "Next time, we plan," she said. And then she turned and walked away, leaving the faint scent of jasmine in her wake and my mind swirling in ways I hadn't expected. I watched her disappear down the street, her silhouette a quiet echo of poise and pain. And I realized this was no longer just about revenge. This was about rediscovering something neither of us had felt in a long, long time. The next meeting wasn't by accident. It wasn't about curiosity or emotional bleed. It was war strategy, and in war, your closest ally is often the one most familiar with your wounds. Victoria invited me to her home, an immaculate brownstone tucked into a quiet street framed by sycamore trees and carefully pruned hedges. It looked like a magazine spread. Too perfect. The kind of place where nothing out of place ever stays that way for long. I stood on her front step, staring at the brass knocker and debating whether to use it or simply ring the bell like a normal human. Before I could choose, the door opened. She wore a long, navy cardigan over a silk blouse, casual pants, barefoot. Her hair was looser than last time, not pinned so tight. She looked softer somehow, more like a woman trying to remember who she used to be. "You came," she said simply, and stepped aside to let me in. Her home smelled like citrus and lavender, a far cry from the scent of chalky gym sweat that still clung to my memories of Tom. Everything was tastefully arranged, muted colors, curated art pieces, a throw blanket that actually matched the damn rug. I stepped into her living room. She handed me a glass of red wine without asking. I took it. "We have options," she said, sitting across from me, crossing one leg elegantly over the other. I spent the last few nights doing what Tom assumed I'd never do, checking his private accounts, digging through his laptop backups. He wasn't as clever as he thought. I raised an eyebrow. "You found something?" "Oh," she said with a sharp little smirk. "I found everything. Photos, voice memos, even his dumbass habit of syncing his Fitbit after workouts. Want to guess whose apartment he goes to on Tuesday and Friday nights?" "Let me guess. My place?" "Almost." She handed me her tablet. "Some boutique apartment complex on 8th. But I ran the parking lot footage. Guess whose car was there every Friday night for the last 6 weeks? My throat went dry. "Sarah." Victoria nodded, her expression hard. "He labels the folder protein shakes. The man's taste in betrayal is only slightly more refined than his taste in metaphors." I chuckled despite myself, taking a long sip of wine. "You've been busy." "So have you, I assume?" she asked, arching a brow. I hesitated, then nodded. "I put a tracking tile in Sarah's gym bag last week. Caught her rerouting her so-called spin class to that same apartment. She's even using one of her coworkers' names to sign into the gym system, so I wouldn't notice the time gaps." Victoria let out a low whistle. "She's thorough. Not thorough enough." We looked at each other then, the air thick with the strange intimacy of shared betrayal. The wine helped. But it wasn't just the alcohol warming my chest. It was her. "I hate how normal they made this," I said, my voice quieter. "Like they stole our lives and didn't even have the decency to feel guilty about it." Victoria nodded, but her gaze lingered on mine. "Do you ever wonder if they wanted to get caught?" I blinked. "What do you mean?" "Sometimes people don't cheat because they want something more," she said softly. "They cheat because they want to destroy what they had. And they're too cowardly to admit it, so they sabotage it." I hadn't thought of it that way, but it made a sick kind of sense. I wanted to believe, I murmured, that maybe this was a phase, a mistake. But now, it's just insult layered on injury. She stood and walked toward the window, sipping her wine. "Tell me something, Daniel," she said without turning. "If this ends in confrontation, do you want to save your marriage?" I stood up slowly and joined her at the window, the city stretching quietly beyond the glass. "I did," I said, "for a while. But I think I was trying to save a version of her that doesn't exist anymore." She turned, looked up at me. Her eyes weren't cold. They were full of recognition. Not pity, not comfort. Something deeper and closer. She reached out, fingertips brushing my forearm, tentative, like she was afraid of what came next, but unwilling to ignore the pull between us. "I don't know if I want revenge," she whispered, "or if I just don't want to feel invisible anymore." The touch lingered. So did the silence. And then I stepped closer. Not for sex. Not yet. But just close enough that I could smell her perfume and see the goosebumps rising along her skin. "You're not invisible to me," I said. We didn't kiss. But the charge between us was undeniable. And when she stepped back, it was with a tremble in her breath and a look that told me she felt it too. "I'll gather the rest of the files," she said softly. "And then we decide how this ends." I nodded. We were more than strangers now. We were allies. And something far more dangerous was beginning to form just beneath the surface. It started as dinner, not a date. Just two people dissecting betrayal over grilled salmon and wine. Two people trying to piece together a plan with enough precision to dismantle the fantasy their spouses had built on lies and lust. Victoria chose the place, a quiet bistro tucked beneath a hotel on the edge of the city. Candlelight. Soft jazz from a corner speaker. It smelled of roasted garlic and cedar, and every table was spaced to make you feel like the only ones there. When she arrived, I couldn't look away. Her dress was black, simple, but it clung to her like a second skin. Her hair was down tonight, long and dark against the pale line of her collarbone. She wore no jewelry, no wedding ring, nothing to remind her of what she was leaving behind for a few hours. "You clean up well," I said, rising as she approached. Her smile was soft but knowing. I didn't want to come here looking like the grieving wife. "You don't," I said. "You look free." She sat, legs crossing with a subtle elegance that made my throat dry. I couldn't help but let my eyes linger for just a second too long. She noticed, and didn't look away. Dinner was good, the wine even better. But it wasn't the food that stirred something in me. It was the way she talked, smart, vulnerable, sharp. It was the occasional brush of her hand against mine as we leaned over our shared strategy. It was the warmth between us that had nothing to do with revenge and everything to do with something long-starved in both of us. "I miss feeling wanted," she said at one point, almost absent-mindedly, her eyes fixed on the rim of her glass. I said nothing, because what could I say? That I wanted her? That I hadn't stopped imagining the softness of her mouth or the heat of her skin since that kiss on the cheek outside the cafe. Instead, I leaned in. "Can I ask you something honest?" "Please do. When was the last time you were touched by someone who actually cared?" She looked up, eyes wide, and wounded. "A long time ago." Silence fell again, thick and raw. When we left the restaurant, neither of us said where we were going next. I didn't ask. She didn't offer. But when her hand found mine in the elevator, it wasn't an accident. Her fingers slid into mine slowly, hesitantly. I squeezed back. We didn't speak as we walked down the hotel corridor. Didn't speak as she opened the door to her room and stepped aside for me to enter. The door clicked shut behind us, and something in the air shifted. She turned to face me, eyes on mine, breath shallow, hands trembling ever so slightly at her sides. "This is a bad idea," she whispered. "I know," I said, but neither of us moved. I stepped closer. She didn't step back. Her breath hitched when I brought my fingers to her cheek, grazing the line of her jaw with the back of my hand. She leaned into it, just barely. "I don't want to be a mistake," she said, eyes locked on mine. "You're not," I murmured. "You're the first thing that's felt real in a long time." And then she kissed me. There was nothing tentative about it. Her lips met mine with urgency, months, maybe years, of loneliness and repression poured into a single kiss. Her fingers tangled in my shirt, pulling me closer, deeper. I responded like I'd been waiting for this all my life. My hand slid into her hair, down the smooth line of her back, gripping her with a need that bordered on desperation. We stumbled toward the bed, lips never parting, shedding clothes in ragged pieces. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't romantic. It was raw, messy, honest. We kissed like we were starving, touched each other like we were trying to erase the fingerprints left behind by people who never really loved us. She gasped when I pressed my mouth to the curve of her neck, moaned my name when my hands explored the places her husband had long forgotten. And when we finally came together, skin to skin, breath tangled, eyes locked, it wasn't just sex. It was reclaiming something we'd both lost. She whispered my name like a confession. I called hers like a prayer. We moved with fury, with need, with something dangerously close to tenderness. Afterward, we lay tangled in silence, our bodies slick with sweat, her fingers tracing idle patterns on my chest. Her head rested beneath my chin, her breath soft against my skin. "I don't regret it," she said, barely audible. "Neither do I." She looked up at me, her eyes hazy, vulnerable. "Does this change things?" I took a long breath. "Yes, but maybe not the way you think." Her lips brushed mine again, gentler now. "We'll figure it out," she said. And we would. But for that night, we didn't have to. Because in that bed, in that moment, we weren't betrayed spouses. We were two broken people, finally seen, finally wanted, and dangerously close to falling into something neither of us expected. We tried to pretend it was a one-time thing. The kind of mistake two bruised people might stumble into during a moment of vulnerability. Something we could file away in the back of our minds, buried under justifications and rationalizations. But the truth was, that night changed something, shifted the gravity between us. We weren't just allies anymore. We were orbiting each other now, pulled by something deeper, hotter, more dangerous. The next time it happened, it wasn't an accident. It wasn't about revenge. It was about need. It was a rainy Tuesday afternoon when she messaged me. "He canceled our dinner plans. Again. I can't sit in this house alone." I didn't think. I didn't hesitate. 45 minutes later, I was at her door, drenched from the storm, breathless from the run up her steps. She didn't say a word, just pulled me inside and pressed her lips to mine before I even had a chance to take off my coat. We didn't make it to the bedroom. The hallway wall, slick with condensation from outside, bore the weight of our second collapse. My hands found her hips, her blouse already half undone. She moaned into my mouth, clawed at my belt, her urgency mirroring mine. When she slid down onto her knees, as never leaving mine, I nearly lost myself. There was no guilt, no hesitation, just two people finally tasting what they'd been denied for too long. Later, we collapsed onto the couch, limbs tangled, hearts thudding. We didn't speak for a long time. Just the sound of rain against the windows, our breathing soft and uneven. I used to fantasize about moments like this, she said, her voice a whisper against my chest. About someone else? I asked. No, she murmured. About someone who looked at me like I wasn't just a piece of furniture in my own home. That hit me like a punch to the chest. Because I knew that feeling too well. I used to think Sarah just needed space, I admitted. Turns out she just needed someone else's arms. Victoria shifted, her fingers tracing the curve of my collarbone. You're different with me, she said. You see me. So do you, I said. More than anyone has in years. And that was the danger. Because this wasn't just about sex anymore. It was becoming something else. Something harder to control. We saw each other twice more that week. Once at a hotel downtown, where we didn't even make it past the elevator before our hands were on each other. The second time, in my car behind a bookstore, quiet, messy, desperate. I don't know what possessed us. Maybe the thrill. Maybe the rebellion. But somewhere in that mess of tangled sheets and breathless confessions, something terrifying crept in, emotion. Real, raw affection. Not just lust. Not just shared anger. Affection that made her linger in my arms a little longer. Affection that made me tuck a strand of hair behind her ear and kiss her forehead afterward. And I knew, deep down, that this wasn't sustainable. Especially when Sarah started noticing. It was small things at first. The way I smiled more, or spaced out over dinner. The fact that I wasn't begging for sex anymore, which had always been part of our twisted ritual, her withholding, me chasing, both of us pretending that was normal. One night, as she slid into bed beside me, she ran her fingers down my chest in that slow, measured way that once would have set my nerves alight. But I didn't react. Not because I didn't want sex, but because I didn't want it from her. She leaned on one elbow, her eyes searching mine. You've been different lately, she said. I shrugged. Work's been busy. No, she said, narrowing her eyes. It's something else. I met her gaze evenly. Maybe I'm just tired of pretending everything's okay. She flinched. Just slightly. Pretending. I turned away, facing the wall. We didn't speak again that night. But I felt her lying there, stiff beside me, her body inches away but unreachable. And I wondered if the cracks in her mask were finally starting to show, if maybe, deep down, she knew that the lies had metastasized into something she couldn't control anymore. The next morning, I got a text from Victoria. He's booked a hotel suite this weekend. Friday night. Room 918 at the Meridian. Want to watch them walk in? My hands trembled. Not because of what I read, but because part of me wanted to say no. Because part of me knew that once we saw it, really saw it, we'd cross a line we couldn't come back from. And the strange part? I wasn't sure if I was more afraid of watching Sarah with him, or more afraid of what I'd do once I did. We sat in the parking garage across from the Meridian Hotel. The soft hum of my car's engine barely masked the silence between us. Victoria wore a long beige coat, legs crossed, fingers nervously tapping on her thigh. I could see the tension in her jaw, the tight line of her mouth. We hadn't touched each other since we got in the car. We were too focused. Room 918. Friday night. 8 p.m. That's when it was supposed to happen. Another one of their secret rendezvous. Another betrayal neatly tucked between excuses and fake meetings and workouts that never left them sweaty in the right way. Victoria had tracked it all. She'd seen the charge on their joint credit card, the location logged on his travel itinerary. Tom thought she never checked. Thought she was too preoccupied with wine tastings and gallery events. But he was wrong. At 7:54, Sarah arrived. My throat clenched as I watched her exit the cab. She was wearing a black wrap dress, one I had bought her last year for our anniversary. Her hair was curled. Her heels were the ones she only wore for nights when she wanted to feel seductive. Except she wasn't dressing for me. She paused briefly at the front entrance to check her reflection in the glass, smoothing her lipstick. Then, like she'd done it a dozen times before, she disappeared into the lobby. Victoria's breath hitched. I turned to her. She didn't hesitate, she said. Not even for a second. A few minutes later, Tom emerged from the underground lot on foot. He looked casual, jeans, a leather jacket, duffel bag slung over one shoulder. He walked like he owned the sidewalk. And when he stepped inside the building, our plan went from theory to fact. I want to confront them, I said suddenly. Tonight. Victoria looked at me sharply. We agreed to wait. Screw waiting. Daniel, she said, voice steady but low. Once you do this, there's no going back. There's nothing left to go back to. I reached for the door handle, but she stopped me with a hand on my arm. Let me go first. I blinked. What? Let me go in. Alone. No. I need to do this, she said. You've already made peace with the end. I haven't. She was right. As much as I hated it. So I let her go. I watched her cross the street, back straight, head high. She looked stunning, like vengeance wrapped in silk. When the revolving door swallowed her, I got out of the car and followed, but at a distance. I didn't want to interrupt. Not yet. She took the elevator. I waited by the lobby bar, out of sight. My heart hammered with every passing second. 15 minutes. 20. And then she came back down, eyes blazing, face flushed, like she'd run through a fire and come out scorched but standing. She didn't see me immediately. I approached her slowly, cautiously. When she did spot me, she shook her head. They didn't even flinch, she said. They were half undressed when I opened the door. Sarah screamed. Tom tried to cover himself with a pillow. I winced. Victoria continued. She tried to spin it. Said it was the first time. That they were confused. I laughed darkly. Confused people don't make hotel reservations and bring wine. She cried, Victoria said. Begged me not to ruin her life. She ruined it herself, I said, voice hard. Victoria's eyes met mine. You still want to talk to them? I shook my head. No. I want to leave. We walked out together. Into the night. Into the city. Into whatever came next. But fate wasn't done with us. As we crossed the street toward my car, I heard someone shout, Daniel. I turned. Sarah stood outside the hotel entrance, jacket pulled around her, mascara running. Please, she cried. Just talk to me. I didn't move. Just stared. She came closer. I know I made a mistake. No, I interrupted. A mistake is a bad haircut or forgetting an anniversary. You made a choice. Her lips trembled. You don't understand. I understand everything now, I said. I understand that every time you lied to my face, you looked me in the eye and did it anyway. Tom appeared behind her, shirt hastily pulled on, face red. This isn't helping anyone, he muttered. I took a step toward him. You should go back inside. He raised his hands. Fine. Whatever. Sarah looked at Victoria. You too. I was never the fool, Victoria said calmly. Just the woman who finally opened her eyes. With that, she turned, walked to the car, and left Sarah standing there, barefoot now, heels in her hand, like some pathetic parody of the woman she used to be. I followed Victoria. Because whatever came next, it wouldn't be with Sarah. It wouldn't be built on lies. It might be built from the rubble, but it would be real. The storm didn't stop at the Meridian. It followed us home. News spreads fast when it's loaded with sex, betrayal, and broken marriages. By Monday, Sarah's best friend Jenna accidentally let it slip to our circle. By Wednesday, Tom's firm was buzzing with whispers, and Victoria's parents were calling nonstop, confused and worried. The truth didn't just burn bridges. It napalmed entire landscapes. Sarah moved out 2 days after the confrontation. I came home from work to find her gone, half her closet cleared, a note left on the counter with shaky handwriting that read, I never meant to hurt you. I just didn't know how to be happy anymore. There was no apology, no ownership, just a quiet little escape, like it had all been too much for her. I stood in the empty bedroom for a long time, her perfume still clinging to the sheets, and realized something both bitter and freeing. I didn't miss her. Not the real her. Not the person she'd become. What I missed was the idea of her, the woman I thought I married, the woman I believed in for far too long. Meanwhile, Victoria's world was unraveling in tandem. Tom, ever the narcissist, denied everything to save face at work. Claimed the affair was a misunderstanding and that Victoria had overreacted. He even tried to guilt her into silence for the sake of his reputation. Bad move. Victoria had receipts. She sent the screenshots to his boss, forwarded a full email thread of their plans, including Tom's own words, crude and confident. By the end of the week, he was put on unpaid leave while HR launched an internal ethics investigation. He called her that night. She didn't pick up. But she did play the voicemail for me. Congratulations, Victoria, his voice snarled. You destroyed everything we built. Over what? Your pride. We sat in her kitchen, listening to it on speaker while she stirred her tea with slow, controlled precision. I didn't destroy anything, she said quietly. He did. I nodded, watching her. But I also saw the guilt creeping in around the edges of her resolve. It wasn't that she regretted exposing him. It was that the damage was bigger than she'd expected. Her mother stopped returning calls. Her sister said she was embarrassed. Old friends ghosted, unsure whose side to take. And me? I started receiving cryptic texts from Sarah. I just want to talk. You don't even know the full story. We can fix this if you just come home. Home. That word had lost all meaning. But the worst part? Some nights I almost answered. Not because I wanted her back, but because guilt is a shapeshifter. It sneaks in wearing empathy's face and asks you to comfort the person who broke you. Victoria felt it too. This is harder than I thought, she said one night, curled beside me on her couch, her voice barely above a whisper. I don't miss him, but I hate that I let it get this far. You didn't let anything happen, I said. They did. They lied. They made us question ourselves. She looked up at me then, her face shadowed by the glow of the TV. Are we just reacting to them? She asked. You and me. Is this real? Or are we just two people clinging to each other because we're scared to be alone? The question hit hard, because I've been wondering the same thing. Our affair, yes, let's call it what it was, had started in the ashes of something else. It was born from pain, betrayal, and the need to feel desired again. But what was it now? I reached for her hand. I don't know yet, I said honestly. But when I'm with you, I don't feel broken. Her eyes softened. I don't either. We didn't sleep together that night. We just lay there, limbs tangled, hearts uncertain. Outside, the chaos continued. Sarah's lawyer reached out, soft feelers, hinting at mediation, assets, the house. My parents called, confused, hurt, asking how it all fell apart so fast. I couldn't explain it to them. How do you describe the kind of slow erosion that eats at love for years, then finally gives way in a landslide? And still, people whispered. Colleagues, neighbors, even distant cousins on Facebook. As if betrayal needed a PR campaign. But here's the thing, the pain was real. And so was the intimacy that followed it. Victoria and I weren't perfect. We were a mess, built from ruins. But what we had was honest. Messy. Complicated. Real. One night, we sat on our balcony, sipping wine as the city hummed below us. She leaned against my shoulder and asked, Do you think people can start again, after burning everything down? I turned to her. I think sometimes you have to burn it all down just to see what was worth saving. She smiled, small and sad. And in that moment, I realized the worst was behind us. But the hardest part? That was still to come. There's a strange quiet that follows destruction. Not the silence of peace, but the breathless calm after a storm, when everything's scattered and soaked, and you're left staring at the pieces, wondering what's salvageable. That's where Victoria and I were. Our old lives were behind us. Burned bridges, empty promises, shattered illusions. The public fallout had dulled. People moved on to fresher gossip. The phone stopped buzzing. Lawyers took over. And for the first time, we were left with something dangerously unfamiliar. Stillness. It was terrifying. One evening, a few weeks after the confrontation, I was at Victoria's place helping her sort through boxes in her storage room. There were old photo albums, mementos from trips with Tom, handwritten anniversary cards tucked under dried-out perfume samples. She stared at one for a long time, a beach photo, her in a sundress, Tom with his arm lazily draped over her shoulder. You can throw that away, she said finally, voice low. I took the frame from her and placed it in the discard pile. But I didn't miss the way her hand lingered afterward, fingers twitching like they still remembered what it felt like to be held without betrayal between them. Do you ever wonder if we're doing the same thing? She asked, not meeting my eyes. What do you mean? Filling holes with each other. Pretending it's healing. I sat on the armrest beside her. Maybe at first. But now, I hesitated. Now it feels different. She finally looked up. You think this could be real? I nodded. I know it could be. She smiled, barely. Then we have to stop pretending we're still hiding. So we did. The next day, we had breakfast at a small cafe near my office. Not tucked in a dark booth or behind sunglasses and excuses, just two people sitting across from each other, visible. And it felt good. Not scandalous. Not secret. Just real. We started doing normal things together, groceries, walks through the park, lazy Sundays. And the weirdest part? It didn't feel like a rebound. It felt like breathing after holding it for too long. Still, the questions lingered in quiet moments. Was this love? Or just proximity born from pain? One night, as we lay together in her bed, her head on my chest, and the rain tapping against the window, she whispered, "I'm scared." Of what? That this ends when the dust settles. That we're just two halves of something broken, clinging to each other because it hurts less than being alone. I kissed the top of her head. "Then let's not cling." She looked up, confused. "Let's choose," I said. Not because we were hurt. Not because it's easier than loneliness. But because when I'm with you, it doesn't feel like I'm fixing something. It feels like I'm beginning something. She didn't respond with words. She kissed me slow, unhurried. The kind of kiss you give someone when you believe them. Later, we went for a walk through the city. The night was warm, the streets alive but not loud. We passed a couple arguing outside a bar. Another sharing a quiet cigarette, their hands barely touching but obviously tethered. "I used to envy couples like that," she said suddenly. "The ones who seem to still like each other?" She nodded. "I don't envy anyone now," I said. "Not anymore." We stopped on the bridge that overlooked the river. The city lights shimmered off the water, blurring like memory. "I don't want to be part of your recovery," she said. "I want to be part of your life." I turned to her. "Then be." She smiled, but it didn't hide the tears. We kissed there, beneath the glow of streetlights and the echo of passing cars. And for the first time in what felt like years, I felt whole. Not patched, not numbed. Whole. But love born from ashes still carries heat. And as we moved forward, the weight of what we left behind followed us like a shadow. Sarah called again. This time, she left a voicemail. "I'm pregnant." I listened to it 3 times before sitting down. Victoria was in the kitchen, humming softly as she unpacked groceries. I hit play and let her hear it. She didn't flinch, just stared out the window. "Do you believe her?" she asked. "I don't know." "Will you go back to her if it's true?" I looked at her, really looked. "No," I said. "If it's mine, I'll be a father. But I won't be her husband again." Victoria walked to me then, slow and sure. She touched my face, gently. "Then I'll stand beside you," she said. "Whatever comes next." And that was the moment I knew. This wasn't just comfort. This wasn't just a reaction. This was a choice. And we were ready to make it. Together. You don't walk away from the ashes of your life unscathed. You wear the burn. You carry the weight. But if you're lucky, really lucky, you learn how to build again. Not from scratch. From truth. It took 6 more weeks before the divorce was finalized. Sarah fought it harder than I expected, dragging out mediation with tears and hollow apologies. She never confirmed the pregnancy claim, and eventually, even her lawyer admitted it had been a desperate play. There was no baby. Just another lie. Tom, meanwhile, fled the wreckage like a man on fire. Last I heard, he moved to Arizona and was living with a bartender nearly half his age. Victoria shook her head when she told me, her voice flat with disbelief. He never wanted consequences, she said. Just attention. When it was all over, the lawyers, the hearings, the grief masquerading as paperwork, I moved. Not far. Just enough to shed the skin of that old house, that old marriage, the man I used to be. Victoria helped me paint the walls of my new place, something modest, bright, with high ceilings and a small patio where we could drink coffee in the morning. I helped her renovate her studio into a proper workspace. We built routines together. Quiet ones. Kind ones. And then one night, we stopped building and just lived. It was a Thursday, late September. The air smelled like cinnamon and smoke. She was sitting on the couch, curled under a blanket, her legs bare, hair tied messily on top of her head. She was reading, a glass of wine half finished on the side table. I watched her for a long time before I spoke. "I love you." She looked up slowly, like she wasn't sure she'd heard me right. "I mean it," I said, standing. "I love you, Victoria. Not because we went through hell together. Not because it was convenient. I love you because with you, I'm not pretending anymore." She closed the book. Her eyes were shining. "I love you too," she said. I just didn't know if it was safe to say at first. I knelt in front of her, took her hands in mine. "We were forged in something dark," I whispered. "But this? What we have now? It's light. And I want to keep choosing it. Every day." She pulled me to her then, our mouths meeting in a kiss that was slow, soft, nothing like the desperate passion of that first night. This kiss was different. This one was ours. People asked questions, of course. How we met. When we started. We didn't lie. We didn't offer the whole mess either. Through mutual loss, Victoria would say, smiling just enough to end the conversation. Some people judged. Some turned away. But those who mattered stayed. And those who left, we let them go. We traveled for the first time together in late October. A cabin in Vermont, leaves exploding in red and gold around us, the air brisk with promise. We hiked during the day, cooked together at night, made love slowly with the windows open and the fire crackling just feet away. There was no talk of the past on that trip. Only the present. Only possibility. One night, lying beneath thick quilts, she turned to me and whispered, "Do you think we'll always carry them with us?" Sarah. Tom. I thought about it. Maybe, I said, but not in the way we used to. Not with bitterness. More like scars. Reminders of where we've been. And who we don't want to become. Exactly. She nodded. Then I can live with that. We fell asleep holding hands. A year passed. Then two. We bought a home together. Nothing extravagant. Just a place with charm and sunlight and a garden she could tend. I asked her to move in after our second spring. She said yes before I even finished the question. We never made grand declarations. We just made room for laughter, for arguments, for growth. There are days I still think of Sarah. Not with longing. With distance. Like looking at a stranger in an old photograph, someone you almost remember but would never recognize on the street. And Victoria? She's not the woman I found crying over betrayal. She's stronger now. Softer, too. Not hardened, just certain. And so am I. We built something from the wreckage. Not a rebound. Not a secret. A life. If you're reading this and you've been where I was, if your heart is cracked open and you're staring down the rubble of what you thought was forever, know this. You will survive. You will wake up. You will rebuild. And one day, someone will look at you, really look, and not see your wounds, but your strength. They'll want you not in spite of what you've been through, but because of it. Because that's how new beginnings start. Not when you forget the fire, but when you rise from it, hand in hand with someone who chooses to stand beside the flame and not run.